Section 3. The Principles 360-Degree Leaders Practice to Lead Up. Follow me, I'm right behind you. If you are trying to make an impact from the middle of an organization, then you probably relate to the myths and challenges outlined in the previous 2 sections of the book. More than likely you have to deal with one or more of them every day. So how do you make the best of your situation while overcoming the challenges and avoiding the myths? You develop the ability to be a 360-degree leader by learning to lead up, with your leader, lead across, with your colleagues, and lead down, with your followers. Each of these draws on different principles and requires different skills. If you want to get ahead, leading up is much better than kissing up. Dan Reiland. Leading up is the 360-degree leader's greatest challenge. Most leaders want to lead, not be led. But most leaders also want to have value added to them. If you take the approach of wanting to add value to those above you, you have the best chance of influencing them. Dan Reiland said as we talked over ideas for this book, if you want to get ahead, leading up is much better than kissing up. In the fall of 2004, I got a glimpse of a world that was totally new to me. At Exchange, an event for executives that I host every year, I invited the attendees to experience a presentation by noted Boston Philharmonic conductor Benjamin Zander along with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. It was an interactive leadership experience where we got to sit in among the musicians of the orchestra as they rehearsed, and the conductor gave us insights into communication, leadership, and followership within a world-class team of artists. It was incredible. That experience prompted me to read the book Zander wrote with his wife, Rosamund Stone Zander, called The Art of Possibility. In it, they tell a story that wonderfully illustrates the value of leading up and how it can add value to a leader in an organization. Benjamin Zander wrote, "One of the most supremely gifted and accomplished artists I have known sat for decades as a modest member of the viola section of one of America's leading orchestras. Eugene Lehner had been the violist of the legendary Kalish Quartet, and had coached the distinguished Juilliard String Quartet as well as innumerable other ensembles. How often I have consulted him on thorny points of interpretation, to have the scales removed from my eyes by his incandescent insight into the music." One Zander went on to say that he wondered if any of the other conductors, who have a notorious reputation for being egoists, had consulted him and drawn on his immense knowledge and experience as an artist and leader. Following is Lehner's response. "One day, during my very first year playing with the orchestra, I remember an occasion when Koussevitzky was conducting a Bach piece and he seemed to be having some difficulty getting the results he wanted. It simply wasn't going right. Fortunately, his friend, the great French pedagogue and conductor Nadia Boulanger, happened to be in town and sitting in on the rehearsal, so Koussevitzky took the opportunity to extricate himself from an awkward and embarrassing situation by calling out to her, 'Nadia, please, will you come up here and conduct? I want to go to the back of the hall to see how it sounds.' Mademoiselle Boulanger stepped up, made a few comments to the musicians, and conducted the orchestra through the passage without a hitch. Ever since that time, in every rehearsal, I have been waiting for the conductor to say, 'Lehrer, you come up here and conduct, I want to go to the back of the hall to hear how it sounds.' It is now 43 years since this happened, and it is less and less likely that I will be asked. 2. I'm sure you don't want to wait 43 years for an opportunity to lead up. You want to be a person of influence beginning today. Influencing your leader isn't something you can make happen in a day. In fact, since you have no control over the people above you on the organizational chart, they may refuse to be influenced by you or anyone under their authority. So there's a possibility that you may never be able to lead up with them. But you can greatly increase the odds of success if you practice the principles in this section of the book. Your underlying strategy should be to support your leader, add value to the organization, and distinguish yourself from the rest of the pack by doing your work with excellence. If you do these things consistently, then in time the leader above you may learn to trust you, rely on you, and look to you for advice. With each step, your influence will increase, and you will have more and more opportunities to lead up. Principle number 1: Lead yourself exceptionally well. Every now and then at a conference, sharp young kids will come up to me and tell me how much they want to become great leaders and how hard they're working to learn and grow. But then they'll lament, "I don't have anyone to lead yet." My response is to tell them, lead yourself. That's where it all starts. Besides, if you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else? Have you ever worked with people who didn't lead themselves well? Worse, have you ever worked for people in leadership positions who couldn't lead themselves? What did they do other than set a bad example? They're like the crow in a fable I once read. The crow was sitting in a tree, doing nothing all day. A small rabbit saw the crow and asked him, "Can I also sit like you and do nothing all day long?" "Sure," answered the crow, "why not?" So the rabbit sat on the ground below the crow, following his example. All of a sudden a fox appeared, pounced on the rabbit, and ate him. The tongue-in-cheek moral of the story is that if you're going to sit around doing nothing all day, you had better be sitting very high up. But if you are down where the action is, you can't afford to be sitting around doing nothing. The key to leading yourself well is to learn self-management. I have observed that most people put too much emphasis on decision-making and too little on decision-managing. As a result, they lack focus, discipline, intentionally, and purpose. I believe this so firmly that I wrote an entire book on it called Today Matters. The thesis of the book is that successful people make right decisions early and manage those decisions daily. We often think that self-leadership is about making good decisions every day, when the reality is that we need to make a few critical decisions in major areas of life and then manage those decisions day to day. Here's a classic example of what I mean. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution to exercise? You probably already believe that exercise is important. Making a decision to do it isn't that hard, but managing that decision, and following through, is much more difficult. Let's say, for example, that you sign up for a health club membership the first week of January. When you sign on, you're excited. But the first time you show up at the gym, there's a mob of people. There are so many cars that police are directing traffic. You drive around for 15 minutes, and finally find a parking place, 4 blocks away. But that's okay, you're there for exercise anyway, so you walk to the gym. Then when you get inside the building, you have to wait to even get into the locker room to change. But you think, that's okay. I want to get into shape. This is going to be great. You think that until you finally get dressed and discover all the machines are being used. Once again you have to wait. Finally, you get on a machine, it's not the one you really wanted, but hey, you'll take it, and you exercise for 20 minutes. When you see the line for the shower, you decide to skip it, take your clothes, and just change at home. The key to leading yourself well is to learn self-management. On your way out, you see the manager of the club, and you decide to complain about the crowds. She says, "Don't worry about it. Come back in 3 weeks, and you can have the closest parking place and your choice of machines." Because by then, 98% of the people who signed up will have dropped out. It's one thing to decide to exercise. It's another to actually follow through with it. As everyone else drops out, you will have to decide whether you will quit like everyone else or if you will stick with it. And that takes self-management. Nothing will make a better impression on your leader than your ability to manage yourself. If your leader must continually expend energy managing you, then you will be perceived as someone who drains time and energy. If you manage yourself well, however, your boss will see you as someone who maximizes opportunities and leverages personal strengths. That will make you someone your leader turns to when the heat is on. What a leader must self-manage. In Today Matters I reference the dozen things that people who desire to be successful should do. But here I want to focus on leadership alone. So if you want to gain credibility with your boss and others, focus on taking care of business in these 7 areas. 1. Manage your emotions. I once heard that people with emotional problems are 144% more likely to have auto accidents than those who don't have them. The same study evidently found that 1 out of 5 victims of fatal accidents had been in a quarrel with another person in the 6 hours preceding the accident. It's important for everybody to manage emotions. Nobody likes to spend time around an emotional time bomb who may go off at any moment. But it's especially critical for leaders to control their emotions because whatever they do affects many other people. Good leaders know when to display emotions and when to delay them. Sometimes they show them so that their people can feel what they're feeling. It stirs them up. Is that manipulative? I don't think so, as long as the leaders are doing it for the good of the team and not for their own gain. Because leaders see more than others and ahead of others, they often experience the emotions first. By letting the team know what you're feeling, you're helping them to see what you're seeing. Good leaders know when to display emotions and when to delay them. Other times leaders have to hold their feelings in check. In his book American Soldier, General Tommy Franks wrote about a devastating incident that occurred in Vietnam when he was a junior officer and the example that was set for him in this area by Lieutenant Colonel Eric Antilla, who put the men he commanded ahead of his own emotional needs. I studied Eric Antilla's eyes. I knew he was gripped by anguish, but he never let it show. We were at war, he was commanding troops in combat. And his quiet resolve in meeting this catastrophe gave us all strength. In an hour he would grieve, but now he stood rock solid. In war, it is necessary that commanders be able to delay their emotions until they can afford them. When I say that leaders should delay their emotions, I'm not suggesting that they deny them or bury them. The bottom line in managing your emotions is that you should put others, not yourself, first in how you handle and process them. Whether you delay or display your emotions should not be for your own gratification. You should ask yourself, what does the team need? Not, what will make me feel better? 2. Manage your time. Time management issues are especially tough for people in the middle. Leaders at the top can delegate. Workers at the bottom usually punch a time clock. They get paid an hourly wage, and they do what they can while they're on the clock. Middle leaders, meanwhile, feel the tension challenge, and they are encouraged, and are often expected, to put in long hours to get work done. Time is valuable. Psychiatrist and author M. Scott Peck said, "Until you value yourself, you won't value your time. Until you value your time, you will not do anything with it." In What to Do Between Birth and Death, William Morrow & Co., 1992, Charles Spezzano says that people don't pay for things with money, they pay for them with time. If you say to yourself, in 5 years, I'll have put enough away to buy that vacation house, then what you are really saying is that the house will cost you 5 years, 1/12 of your adult life. The phrase spending your time is not a metaphor, said Spezzano. It's how life works. Until you value yourself, you won't value your time? M. Scott Peck. Instead of thinking about what you do and what you buy in terms of money, instead think about them in terms of time. Think about it. What is worth spending your life on? Seeing your work in that light just may change the way you manage your time. 3. Manage your priorities. The best 360-degree leaders are generalists. They know a lot about a lot of things. They often have no choice because of the multi-hat challenge. But at the same time, the old proverb is true, if you chase 2 rabbits, both will escape. What is a leader in the middle to do? Since you are not the top leader, you don't have control over your list of responsibilities or your schedule. You should still try to get yourself to the point where you can manage your priorities and focus your time in this way: 80% of the time, work where you are strongest 15% of the time, work where you are learning 5% of the time, work in other necessary areas. This may not be easy to achieve, but it is what you should strive for. If you have people working for you, try to give them the things you aren't good at but they are. Or if possible, trade some duties with your colleagues so that each of you is playing to your strength. Remember, the only way to move up from the middle is to gradually shift from generalist to specialist, from someone who does many things well to someone who focuses on a few things she does exceptionally well. The secret to making the shift is often discipline. In Good to Great, Jim Collins wrote, "Most of us lead busy, but undisciplined lives. We have ever-expanding to-do lists, trying to build momentum by doing, and doing more. And it rarely works." Those who build the good to great companies, however, made as much use of stop-doing lists as the to-do lists. They displayed a remarkable amount of discipline to unplug all sorts of extraneous junk. 2. You must be ruthless in your judgment of what you should not do. Just because you like doing something doesn't mean it should stay on your to-do list. If it is a strength, do it. If it helps you grow, do it. If your leader says you must handle it personally, do it. Anything else is a candidate for your stop-doing list. 4. Manage your energy. Some people have to ration their energy so that they don't run out. Up until a few years ago, that wasn't me. When people asked me how I got so much done, my answer was always, high energy, low IQ. From the time I was a kid, I was always on the go. I was 6 years old before I realized my name wasn't settled down. Now that I'm 58, I do have to pay attention to my energy level. In thinking for a change, I shared one of my strategies for managing my energy. When I look at my calendar every morning, I ask myself, what is the main event? That is the one thing to which I cannot afford to give anything less than my best. That one thing can be for my family, my employees, a friend, my publisher, the sponsor of a speaking engagement, or my writing time. I always make sure I have the energy to do it with focus and excellence. The greatest enemy of good thinking is busyness. Even people with high energy can have that energy sucked right out of them under difficult circumstances. I've observed that leaders in the middle of an organization often have to deal with what I call the ABC's energy drain. Activity without direction, doing things that don't seem to matter, burden without action, not being able to do things that really matter, conflict without resolution, not being able to deal with what's the matter. If you find that you are in an organization where you often must deal with these ABCs, then you will have to work extra hard to manage your energy well. Either that or you need to look for a new place to work. 5. Manage your thinking. Poet and novelist James Joyce said, "Your mind will give back to you exactly what you put into it." The greatest enemy of good thinking is busyness. And middle leaders are usually the busiest people in an organization. If you find that the pace of life is too demanding for you to stop and think during your workday, then get into the habit of jotting down the 3 or 4 things that need good mental processing or planning that you can't stop to think about. Then carve out some time later when you can give those items some good think time. That may be 30 minutes at home the same day, or you may want to keep a running list for a whole week and then take a couple of hours on Saturday. Just don't let the list get so long that it disheartens or intimidates you. I encouraged readers in Thinking for a Change to have a place to think, and I wrote about the thinking chair I have in my office. I don't use that chair for anything else other than my think time. I've discovered since the book's publication that I didn't explain clearly enough how to correctly use the thinking chair. People at conferences told me that they sat in their own thinking chairs and nothing happened. I explained to them that I don't sit in that thinking chair without an agenda, just hoping that a good idea hits me. What I usually do is think about the things I've jotted down because I couldn't think about them during a busy day. I take the list to my chair, put it in front of me, and give each item as much think time as it needs. Sometimes I'm evaluating a decision I've already made. Sometimes I'm thinking through a decision I will have to make. Sometimes I'm developing a strategy. Other times I'm trying to be creative in fleshing out an idea. A minute of thinking is often more valuable than an hour of talk or unplanned work. I want to encourage you to try managing your thinking in this way. If you've never done it before, you will be amazed by the payoff. And know this, 1 minute, 1 hour. A minute of thinking is often more valuable than an hour of talk or unplanned work. 6. Manage your words. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden said, "Show me what you can do, don't just tell me what you can do." I think just about every leader has said, or at least thought, those words at some time or another when dealing with an employee. Leaders value action. And if they are going to stop what they're doing long enough to listen, the words they hear need to have value. Make them count. In the Forbes Scrapbook of Thoughts on the Business Life, Triumph Books, 1995, Émile de Girardin is quoted as saying, "The power of words is immense. A well-chosen word has often sufficed to stop a flying army, to change defeat into victory, and to save an empire. If you wish to make sure that your words carry weight, then weigh them well." The good news is that if you manage your thinking and take advantage of focused think time, you will probably see improvement in the area of managing your words too. David Mckinley, a 360-degree leader in a large organization in Plano, Texas, told me a story about something that happened in his first job after graduate school. He was preparing to make an important call on someone, and he decided that he should ask the top leader to go with him. When they got there, David, in his enthusiasm, just wouldn't stop talking. He didn't give his leader a chance to do anything but watch until the very end of their visit. As they returned to the car, David's boss told him, "I might as well have stayed at the office." He went on to explain how his presence was superfluous. David told me, "I learned a huge lesson that day about staying in bounds when I was with the senior leader. His honest counsel and correction strengthened our relationship and has served me well throughout my life." If you have something worthwhile to say it briefly and well. If you don't, sometimes the best thing to do is remain silent. 7. Manage your personal life. You can do everything right at work and manage yourself well there, but if your personal life is a mess, it will eventually turn everything else sour. What would it profit a leader to climb to the top of the organizational chart but to lose a marriage or alienate the children? As someone who spent many years counseling people, I can tell you, no career success is worth it. Success is having those closest to me love and respect me the most. For years one of my definitions of success has been this: having those closest to me love and respect me the most. That is what is most important. I want the love and respect of my wife, my children, and my grandchildren before I want the respect of anyone I work with. Don't get me wrong. I want the people who work with me to respect me too, but not at the expense of my family. If I blow managing myself at home, then the negative impact will spill over into every area of my life, including work. If you want to lead up, you must always lead yourself first. If you can't, you have no credibility. I've found the following to be true: if I can't lead myself, others won't follow me. If I can't lead myself, others won't respect me. If I can't lead myself, others won't partner with me. That applies whether the influence you desire to exert is on the people above you, beside you, or below you. The better you are at making sure you're doing what you should be doing, the better chance you have for making an impact on others. Principle number 2: lighten your leader's load. You've probably heard the saying, pass the buck, meaning to duck ownership or shirk responsibility. One source says that the expression comes from when card games were played in the Old West, and a buck knife was used to indicate who was to deal the cards next. If someone didn't want to deal, he could pass the buck. When Harry Truman was President of the United States, he used to keep a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." By that he meant that no matter how many people might avoid taking responsibility up and down the chain of command, he would take responsibility. In an address at the National War College on December 19, 1952, Truman said, "You know, it's easy for the Monday morning quarterback to say what the coach should have done, after the game is over. But when the decision is up before you, and on my desk I have a motto which says the buck stops here, the decision has to be made." On another occasion he said, "The president, whoever he is, has to decide. He can't pass the buck to anybody. No one else can do the deciding for him. That's his job." One responsibility weighs heavily on leaders. The higher they are in an organization, the heavier the responsibility. As President of the United States, Truman carried the weight of the entire nation on his shoulders. Leaders can give up many things. They can delegate many things. The one thing that the top leader can never let go of is final responsibility. How lifting your leader lifts you as an employee: you can do one of two things for your leader. You can make the load lighter, or you can make it heavier. It's similar to the elevator principle in winning with people: we can lift people up or take people down in our relationships. If you help lift the load, then you help your leader succeed. When the boss succeeds, the organization succeeds. Conversely, it is almost impossible for you to win if your boss fails. Leaders can give up many things. They can delegate many things. The one thing that the top leader can never let go of is final responsibility. I should mention that motives do matter when it comes to lifting your leader's load. I'm recommending that you lift up, not suck up. That's not to say that people who are nice to the boss and hope it helps their careers have bad motives or poor character. They have just misplaced their energies. And a good leader can tell the difference between someone who really wants to help and someone who is trying to curry favor. There are many positive benefits that can come from helping to lift your leader's load. Following are a few of those benefits. Lifting shows you are a team player. When I think of the consummate team player, I think of Kirk Nowry, the president of Enjoy Stewardship Services. When Kirk first began with ISS, he was one of our road warriors. He consulted with churches and also presented information about ISS and its services to pastors and their lay leaders. But every time I saw Kirk, he used to ask me the same question: "John, is there anything I can do for you?" It was his way of letting me know that he was a team player, willing to do whatever it took for ISS to succeed. Now that Kirk is running the company, he still asks me that question whenever we meet. And if I ask him to do anything, Whether it's to accomplish a big company goal or help me with something personal, he completes the task with excellence. Lifting shows gratitude for being on the team. A Chinese proverb says, "Those who drink the water must remember those who dug the well." Gratitude is one of the most attractive of all personal attributes. Sometimes I think it is one of the least practiced. But I have to say that the people I work with are not remiss in this area. I find them to be very grateful. They continually show their gratitude by lifting my load and taking things off of my shoulders, and because they take good care of me, I try to take good care of them. Lifting makes you part of something bigger. In February 2005, a few members of the Equip staff, several volunteer leadership trainers, and some current and potential donors made a trip to Europe to launch the Million Leaders Mandate there. It was an amazing experience as we met with national leaders in the United Kingdom, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia. When you help someone bigger than you, it makes you part of something bigger. We covered a lot of territory in 10 days. Often we flew into a country in the morning, took in some sights in the afternoon, and met with key leaders in the evening or the next day. As we rushed from place to place and traveled together on buses from airport to hotel to meeting hall, Doug Carter, the vice president of Equip, continually reminded everyone of the vision of Equip and the Million Leaders Mandate, to train and equip 1 million people on 6 continents for spiritual leadership. Doug is a good leader. He was reminding us that what we were doing was a part of something bigger than the events of the moment. It's the truth that when you help someone bigger than you, it makes you part of something bigger. Doesn't just about everyone desire to be part of something significant? There is also another benefit to being part of something bigger: it makes you bigger. You cannot contribute to something significant without being changed. If you want to be better than you are, become part of something bigger than you are. Lifting gets you noticed. When you lift people up, they can't help but notice it. Even if others aren't aware of what you're doing, the person being lifted is. Of course, lifting others isn't meant to be a one-time occurrence. You can't add value to people by helping them once. It needs to be an ongoing process if you want the value you add to come back to you. How often you lift, how the leader responds: once or twice, thanks. Many times, I need you. Continually let me help you. If you continually help others, then others will eventually want to help you. Even if the leader you work for never turns around to lift you up in return, someone who has seen you doing that lifting will extend a hand to you. Just remember, it's not how heavy the load is. It's how you carry it. Lifting increases your value and influence. Do you have a friend or family member who always makes things better for you, who seems to add value to you every time you are together? If you do, I bet that person has a special place in your heart. Likewise, load lifters have a special place in the hearts of their leaders. From the perspective of the top leader, the question that must be asked is, am I better off with them on the team? That's really the bottom line for a leader. If you make your leaders feel that they are better off because you are part of the team, then your value goes up, and so does your influence. I ask myself that question about 2 years after hiring someone. I'm naturally optimistic, so it takes that long for my enthusiasm for them to be tempered enough for me to look at their performance realistically. Other leaders could perhaps make a fair assessment sooner than that, though I also recommend that pessimists wait 2 years to get over their skepticism. The lift you give for the leader often leads to the leader lifting you. When you lift a leader's load, your load certainly gets heavier. You're taking on more when leading in the middle is already difficult. Know, however, that the lift you give for the leader often leads to the leader lifting you. How to lift your leader's load. As you read about the various ways that lifting your leader's load can help you, perhaps several ways you could help came to mind. I recommend that you go with your instincts. But just in case you aren't sure of where to begin, please allow me to give you several suggestions. 1. Do your own job well. First Hall of Fame baseball player Willie Mays said, "It isn't hard to be good from time to time in sports. What's tough is being good every day." When you are good every day, you do the first important step in lifting your leader's load: you prevent him from having to lift yours. I once had an employee who continually told me that he wanted to help me. At first, I thought, what a great attitude. But then I began to notice something. Despite his constant requests to help, he never seemed to get his own work done. After seeing that this was a pattern, I sat him down and told him that the best way he could help me was to do his job. But guess what? He kept asking to help me but didn't follow through and get his own job done. I finally concluded that what he wanted was to spend time with me, not help me. In time, I had to let him go. 2. When you find a problem, provide a solution. I love the Peanuts comic strip in which Lucy walks up to Charlie Brown, who is leaning against a wall with his head in his hands. She looks at him and says, "Discouraged again, eh, Charlie Brown? You know what your trouble is?" She asks when he doesn't respond. "The whole trouble with you is that you are you. It isn't hard to be good from time to time in sports. What's tough is being good every day." Willie Maxwell, "What in the world can I do about that?" He responds in exasperation. Lucy answers, "I don't pretend to be able to give advice. I merely point out the trouble." Load lifters don't follow the path of Lucy. They are more like Henry Ford, who said, "Don't find a fault, find a remedy." In an organization I led many years ago, I seemed to have a whole bunch of Lucys working for me, who seemed to continually dump problems on my desk and then go away to look for more problems. I instituted a rule. Anyone who brought a problem to me wanting help with it had to also come up with 3 potential solutions before coming to see me. Did I do that because I didn't want to help them? No, I did it because I wanted them to learn to help themselves. They quickly became creative and resourceful. As time went by, they needed less help and became better decision makers and leaders. 3. Tell leaders what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Because of their intuition, good leaders often see more than others see, and they see things before others do. Why? Because they see everything from a leadership bias. But if the organization they lead gets large, they often lose their edge. They become disconnected. What is the remedy to this problem? They ask the people in their inner circle to see things for them. Very few big executives want to be surrounded by yes men. Burton Bigelow: most good leaders want the perspective of people they trust. Sales expert Burton Bigelow said, "Very few big executives want to be surrounded by yes men." Their greatest weakness often is the fact that yes men build up around the executive a wall of fiction, when what the executive wants most of all is plain facts. One of the ways to become a person whom leaders trust is to tell them the truth. One of the biggest load lifters in my life is Linda Eggers, my assistant. Every time I meet with Linda, I ask her to keep me on track. And believe me, I trust her in everything. Having Linda work with me is like possessing an extra brain. Early on in our working relationship, I asked Linda to always be upfront with me when it came to bad news. I didn't want her to talk around issues or try to spare my feelings. If I'm going to get bad news, I want it straight and right away. My promise to Linda, in return, was to never shoot the messenger. If you were to talk to Linda, I believe she would confirm that I have kept that promise. If you've never spoken up to your leaders and told them what they need to hear, then it will take courage. As World War II General and later President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "A bold heart is half the battle." But if you are willing to speak up, you can help your leaders and yourself. Start small and be diplomatic. If your leader is receptive, become more frank over time. If you get to the point where your leader is not only willing to hear from you but actually wants your perspective, then remember this: your job is to be a funnel, not a filter. Be careful to convey information without spinning it. Good leaders want the truth, even if it hurts. 4. Go the second mile. Motivational sales expert Zig Ziglar said, "There are no traffic jams on the extra mile." When you do more than is asked, you will certainly stand out from the crowd. When you have a whatever it takes attitude related to helping the organization, then you can emerge as a go-to player. I address this in greater depth in Chapter 8 of this section. People who emerge from the crowd often become members of a leader's inner circle. Leaders expect more from their inner circle. They come to expect a second-mile mindset from them. They expect extra effort, extra responsibility, and extra thinking. But the good leaders also give extra in return. There are no traffic jams on the extra mile. 5. Stand up for your leader whenever you can. Helping your leaders means supporting them and standing up for them whenever you can. Former Army General and U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell said, "When we are debating an issue, loyalty means giving me your honest opinion, whether you think I'll like it or not. Disagreement, at this stage, stimulates me. But once a decision has been made, the debate ends. From that point on, loyalty means executing the decision as if it were your own. 6. Stand in for your leader whenever you can. Every employee in an organization is a representative of that organization. And individuals at all levels also represent the leaders they work for. Accordingly, they can choose to step up and stand in for their leaders, representing them well and serving the organization. Years ago, I used to tell new leaders I hired that every person in our organization walked around with 2 buckets. One bucket contained water, and the other gasoline. As leaders, they would continually come across small fires, and they could pour water or gasoline on a fire. It was their choice. 7. Ask your leader how you can lift the load. It's good to anticipate what your leader may need or want. It's even better to come right out and ask. If you are doing your own job and doing it well, chances are your leader will be glad to tell you how you can help. Over the years, as I have worked as a consultant and speaker, I have discovered that there are 2 approaches that people in those industries take. One type of consultant walks into an organization and says, "Here's what I know, sit down and listen." Another says, "What do I need to know? We'll work on this together." Likewise, some speakers arrive at an engagement with the idea that it's their moment to be in the spotlight, and they are quick to tell you what you can do to help them. Other speakers recognize that it's their moment to add value to the leader who invited them. As I have grown in maturity and experience, I have tried to become like the communicators in that second group. Like many leaders early in their lives, I started out focusing on myself. But in time I came to recognize that when I am invited to speak, I am there to serve the leaders who invited me. I want to add value to them, to lift their load if I can. To do that, I ask them 3 things. Can I say something that you have said before to give you another voice? Can I say something that you would like to say but can't, to give you a needed voice? Can I say something that you haven't said yet to give you the first voice? Most of the time, the good leaders say yes to those requests. They are always thinking ahead, thinking about where to take the organization and how they will get there. When someone asks how he can help, they are delighted. All it takes is for someone to ask. Principle number 3: be willing to do what others won't. Successful people do the things that unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. John C. Maxwell said that an aid group in South Africa once wrote to missionary and explorer David Livingstone asking, "Have you found a good road to where you are? If so, we want to know how to send other men to join you." Livingstone replied, "If you have men who will come only if they know there is a good road, I don't want them. I want men who will come even if there is no road at all." That's what top leaders want from the people working for them. They want individuals who are willing to do what others won't. Few things gain the appreciation of a top leader more quickly than an employee with a whatever-it-takes attitude. Few things gain the appreciation of a top leader more quickly than an employee with a whatever-it-takes attitude. That is what 360-degree leaders must have. They must be willing and able to think outside of their job description, to be willing to tackle the kinds of jobs that others are too proud or too frightened to take on. These things are what often elevate 360-degree leaders above their peers. And remember, being noticed is one of the first steps to influencing the person above you. What it means to do what others won't. Perhaps you already possess a whatever-it-takes mindset, and if a task is honest, ethical, and beneficial, you're willing to take it on. If so, good for you. Now all you need is to know how to direct that attitude into action so that you're doing the things that will make the greatest impact and create influence with others. Here are the top 10 things I recommend you do to be a 360-degree leader who leads up. 1. 360-degree leaders taketh tough jobs. The ability to accomplish difficult tasks earns others' respect very quickly. In developing the leader within you, I point out that one of the quickest ways to gain leadership is problem solving. Problems continually occur at work, at home, and in life in general. My observation is that people don't like problems, weary of them quickly, and will do almost anything to get away from them. This climate makes others place the reins of leadership into your hands, if you are willing and able to either tackle their problems or train them to solve them. Your problem-solving skills will always be needed because people always have problems. 1. You learn resiliency and tenacity during tough assignments, not easy ones. When tough choices have to be made and results are difficult to achieve, leaders are forged. Not only does taking on tough jobs earn you respect, but it also helps you become a better leader. You learn resiliency and tenacity during tough assignments, not easy ones. When tough choices have to be made and results are difficult to achieve, leaders are forged. 2. 360-degree leaders pay their dues. Former U.S. Senator Sam Nunn said, "You have to pay the price. You will find that everything in life exacts a price, and you will have to decide whether the price is worth the prize. To become a 360-degree leader, you will have to pay a price. You will have to give up other opportunities in order to lead. You will have to sacrifice some personal goals for the sake of others. You will have to get out of your comfort zone and do things you've never done before. You will have to keep learning and growing when you don't feel like it. You will have to repeatedly put others ahead of yourself. And if you desire to be a really good leader, you will have to do these things without fanfare or complaint. But remember, as NFL legend George Hollis said, nobody who ever gave their best ever regretted it." 3. 360-degree leaders work in obscurity. I think very highly of the importance of leadership. I guess that's obvious for a guy whose motto is everything rises and falls on leadership. Occasionally someone will ask me about how ego fits into the leadership equation. They'll want to know what keeps a leader from having a huge ego. I think the answer lies in each leader's pathway to leadership. If people paid their dues and gave their best in obscurity, ego is usually not a problem. One of my favorite examples of this occurred in the life of Moses in the Old Testament. Though born a Hebrew, he lived a life of privilege in the palace of Egypt until he was 40 years old. But after killing an Egyptian, he was exiled to the desert for 40 years. There God used him as a shepherd and father, and after 4 decades of faithful service in obscurity, Moses was called to leadership. Scripture says by that time he was the most humble man in the world. Bill Purvis, the senior pastor of a large church in Columbus, Georgia, said, "If you do what you can, with what you have, where you are, then God won't leave you where you are, and He will increase what you have." English novelist and poet Emily Bronte said, "If I could, I would always work in silence and obscurity, and let my efforts be known by their results." Not everyone wants to be out of the spotlight as she did. But it's important for a leader to learn to work in obscurity because it is a test of personal integrity. The key is being willing to do something because it matters, not because it will get you noticed. 4. 360-degree leaders succeed with difficult people. People working at the bottom of an organization usually have no choice concerning whom they work with. As a result, they often have to work with difficult people. In contrast, people at the top almost never have to work with difficult people because they get to choose who they work with. If someone they work with becomes difficult, they often let that person go or move him or her out. For leaders in the middle, the road is different. They have some choice in the matter, but not complete control. They may not be able to get rid of difficult people, but they can often avoid working with them. But good leaders, ones who learn to lead up, across, and down, find a way to succeed with people who are hard to work with. Why do they do it? Because it benefits the organization. How do they do it? They work at finding common ground and connect with them. And instead of putting these difficult people in their place, they try to put themselves in their place. You don't have the right to put the organization on the line. If you are going to take a risk, you need to put yourself on the line. 5. 360-degree leaders put themselves on the line. I mentioned previously that if you want to lead up, you must distinguish yourself from your colleagues. How do you do that, especially while paying your dues or working in obscurity? One way is to take a risk. You cannot play it safe and stand out at the same time. Here's the tricky thing about taking risks in the middle of the organization. You should never be casual about risking what's not yours. I call that betting with other people's money. You don't have the right to put the organization on the line. Nor would it be right for you to create high risk for others in the organization. If you are going to take a risk, you need to put yourself on the line. Play it smart, but don't play it safe. 6. 360-degree leaders admit faults but never make excuses. It's easier to move from failure to success than from excuses to success. And you will have greater credibility with your leader if you admit your shortcomings and refrain from making excuses. I guarantee that. Of course, That doesn't mean you don't need to produce results. Baseball coach and tutor McDonald Valentine said, "The higher the level you play, the less they accept excuses. It's easier to move from failure to success than from excuses to success." The middle of the organization is a good place to discover your identity and work things out. You can discover your leadership strengths there. If you fall short in an area, you can work to overcome your mistakes. If you keep falling short in the same way, you may learn how to overcome an obstacle, or you may discover an area of weakness where you will need to collaborate with others. But no matter what, don't make excuses. Stephen Brown, president of the Fortune Group, summed up this issue: essentially there are two actions in life, performance and excuses. Make a decision as to which you will accept from yourself. 7. 360-degree leaders do more than expected. Expectations are high for people at the top. And, unfortunately, in many organizations the expectations for people at the bottom are low. But expectations are mixed in the middle. So if you do more than is expected of you, you stand out, and often there can be wonderful, serendipitous results. When Chris Hodges, a senior pastor who is a donor and volunteer trainer with Equip, was working as a staff member at a large church in Baton Rouge, his boss, Larry Stockstill, had the opportunity to become the host of a live television show. Chris had no responsibilities related to the show, and was, in fact, rather low in the organization's hierarchy. But he knew that the show was important to Larry, so Chris took it upon himself to go down to the studio to see the first taping. As it turned out, he was the only staff member to do so. There was great excitement in the studio as the hour of the first broadcast approached. That excitement quickly turned to panic when the guest who was scheduled to appear on the show called in to say he was having a problem getting there. The guest wasn't worried, because he thought they could just start the taping later. What he didn't realize was that the show was scheduled to go on the air live. In that moment, Larry looked around, saw Chris, and said, "You're going to be my guest today." The crew scrambled, put a microphone on Chris, slapped some makeup on his face, and sat him down in the chair next to Larry. Then to Chris's great shock, when the lights turned on and the cameras started rolling, Larry introduced Chris as his co-host. Chris ended up being on that show with Larry every week for 2.5 years. The experience changed him forever. Not only did it build his relationship with his leader, but it also made him well known in the community. More importantly, he learned to think on his feet and become a better communicator, skills that serve him well every day of his life. And it all happened because he decided to do more than was expected of him. 8. 360-degree leaders are the first to step up and help in 25 ways to win with people. I point out that being the first to help others is a great way to make them feel like $1,000,000. It lets them know you care. The kind of influence you gain from helping a peer is also gained with your leader when you step up and help others. Haven't you found the following to be true? The first person to volunteer is a hero and is given the 10 treatment. The second person is considered a helper and viewed as only slightly above average. The third person, along with everyone after, is seen as a follower and is ignored. It doesn't matter whom you're helping, whether it's your boss, a peer, or someone working for you. When you help someone on the team, you help the whole team. And when you help the team, you're helping your leaders. And that gives them reasons to notice and appreciate you. 9. 360-degree leaders perform tasks that are not their job. Few things are more frustrating for a leader than having someone refuse to do a task because it is not his job. In moments like those, most of the top leaders I know are tempted to invite such people to be without a job altogether. Good leaders don't think in those terms. They understand the law of the big picture from the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. The goal is more important than the role. A 360-degree leader's goal is to get the job done, to fulfill the vision of the organization and its leader. That often means doing whatever it takes. As a leader moves up, that more often takes the form of hiring someone to get it done, but leaders in the middle often don't have that option. So instead, they jump in and get it done themselves. 10. 360-degree leaders take responsibility for their responsibilities. I recently saw a cartoon where a dad is reading a book to his little boy at bedtime. The title on the cover of the book says, "The Story of Job," and the boy has only one question for his father: why didn't he sue someone? Isn't that the way a lot of people think these days? Their knee-jerk reaction to adversity is to blame someone else. That's not the case with 360-degree leaders. They take hold of their responsibilities and follow through with them 100%. Lack of responsibility can be a deal breaker when it comes to the people who work for me. When my employees don't get the job done, certainly I become disappointed. But I'm willing to work with them to help them improve, if they are taking responsibility for themselves. I know they will work at getting better if they take ownership and have teachable spirits. We have no starting point for improvement, however, if they don't get the job done and they fail to take responsibility. In such cases, it's time to move on and find someone else to take their place. J. C. Penney said, "Unless you are willing to drench yourself in your work beyond the capacity of the average man, you are just not cut out for positions at the top." I'd say that you're not cut out for leadership in the middle either. People who want to be effective are willing to do what others won't. And because of that, their leaders are willing to resource them, promote them, and be influenced by them.